Morning. We're going to just let people get in for a couple of seconds here before we get started. All right. It looks like our numbers stopped moving, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the day after the legislative session. It's very exciting. If you all want to just drop your name and where you're coming from in the state and how you're feeling the day after the session in the chat, that would be great. Just so we can have a little welcome for everyone. My name is Heather Tritton. I am the president and CEO of the Colorado Children's Campaign, and I am so thrilled that all of you have joined us in this sort of cloudy, dreary morning, but very exciting. We have some great stuff to tell you about. Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. Again, please put your name, I see names coming in here, that's great, into the chat. If you have any questions during this time, if you could use the Q&A function in Zoom to share your questions, that will go directly to the panelists, and then we will take time at the end to address questions that we get through the Q&A. And then we are recording this webinar, so you'll receive a follow-up email later this week with a link to the video, so if you want to relive this experience, you can. And we will be sharing some resources throughout the video or throughout the webinar in the chat. So you can just watch for some links to be coming your way. So as you all probably know, the Colorado Children's Campaign is a nonpartisan nonprofit advocacy group, and we are committed to realizing every chance for every child in Colorado. And we've been around since 1985. A core piece of our work is advocating for the development and implementation of equitable, data-driven policy priorities that improve child well-being and health, education, early childhood, and family economic prosperity. You're going to hear about all of those things today. And I know we have some of our funders that have joined us today and supporters that are on the call. So thank you so much for being here today, but also for your support all the time. We can't do any of what we do without you. So let's get going. We made it. We are here the day after the session, and I could not be more excited because a lot of big things happened for kids this year. I think we went into the session hoping that it would be a good year, but not knowing how great of a year it really was. And so as they wrapped up yesterday, I think that there was just a great feeling of accomplishing a lot of things that we didn't think that we could accomplish back in January. So some of you probably joined us for our mid-session update, and at that time, we were pretty unsure of where some of our priorities would land. And I think some of the biggest things that happened for kids were still percolating then, and they've happened. So you're going to hear about this in a little bit. Since that mid-session update, we've been very, very busy. And today, the team is really going to share a lot of highlights about specific bills and priorities. But I just want to call out that we have made some big investments in Colorado's children's, despite some tough fiscal realities that we were facing during this legislative session. It was amazing to see legislators really prioritizing children and families as they were figuring out how to use the limited dollars that they had. This year, we changed the way we fund schools in Colorado. You're going to hear about that. But now the kids that have the most needs are going to get the most funding. So that's a very exciting change for our most vulnerable children. We created a new caregiver tax credit that is going to give relief to childcare and FFN professionals and home health professionals so that they can do what they love doing every day. And we passed a family affordability tax credit that is going to be a game changer for families and is going to be a key component to making Colorado's poverty rate the lowest in the nation. So we are thrilled about that. Can't wait to see that happen. And as we're talking through all of these things, we also want to just remind everyone it takes a village to make these things happen. There is a lot of tears, sweat, hard work, lots of thinking, lots of negotiating that goes into every single thing that passes during the legislative session. Nothing ends the way it starts. And we are so happy that we have so many amazing partners that come to our table and that invite us to their table so that we can get amazing things done for kids in Colorado. I think we feel really fortunate that we have some great people in our departments. We've had to rely on a lot of state departments during the legislative session for their expertise and understanding how we make things happen properly. So that is a huge shout out for them. And then our legislators, we have incredible legislators who care a whole lot about kids in Colorado. And without them, we couldn't get any of these things done. But it's so fabulous to work with legislators who continue to push forward and continue to say, no, we can get this done, even at times where it looks pretty bleak. So I'm just so thrilled that we have that commitment and that our legislature is really a place that cares about kids. And then finally, the governor's office. We have a lot of good partners in the governor's office as well. And sometimes it takes some push pull with the legislature and the governor's office and advocates to get a lot of things done. And we were able to do that. And then I want to give a final big shout out to the Children's Campaign staff. You're going to hear from them in just a minute. But we went into this session with a very new team and thinking that our goal was to create some relationships and do a little bit of good work. And we've done a lot of incredible work. And so the campaign staff has been working really hard for the last 4 months, and I could not be more excited about our team and where our team is going to go next. So I'm going to hand it over to them so they can tell you about all of our big wins. And first up is Sarah Barnes.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this morning. I'm Sarah Barnes. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm our Senior Director of Policy and also our Director of Family Economic Prosperity. And I'm really excited this morning to be able to share with you some really incredible wins for kids and families this session to support families' economic prosperity. So this is our true north goal in family economic prosperity that guides all of our work all the time and throughout the session. A quick summary on what you're going to hear from me today, just a few highlights from the session in family economic prosperity. First, Colorado is soon going to have better data on evictions across our state. Also, legislators passed several refundable tax credits this session that are really going to support families. And finally, legislators also reduced barriers for families in a few ways. And a couple I'll highlight today are going to be through the eviction process and also in accessing public benefits. So to start off, we have been so proud to partner with Enterprise Community Partners on this multi-year effort to pass Senate Bill 64, which will more consistently and comprehensively collect and publish data on trends that are present in residential evictions in Colorado. This bill was introduced in the first week of session, and it was a nail biter until nearly the end, given our very tight budget this session for general fund expenditures. We are so grateful to the sponsors of Senate Bill 64, Senators Mullica and Marchman, Representatives Byrd and Judah, and to our lobbyists for endless persistence and creativity to get this done this session. We are very excited about the success of the Children's Campaign because we are a data-driven organization and we know that this bill will result in more effective policies down the road to prevent evictions from happening in the first place. We've also been very alarmed by a new national study out that's showing that households with children are actually the most likely to experience eviction and that you are most likely to face an eviction during the first 5 years of your life. We were also really excited this session to support an effort led by our good partners at the Coalition for the Homeless and the Colorado Poverty Law Project to help prevent families from being evicted by increasing access to the eviction process when they are involved. Families who are facing eviction are often facing many other stressors in their lives, and requiring them to pay a fee to respond to an eviction complaint or go through a process of qualifying to waive that fee makes it more likely a family's not going to participate in the eviction proceeding, and that leads to more families being evicted through a default judgment rather than participating and having a chance to find a better solution. So we were really excited to support House Bill 1099 this session that eliminates filing fees for renters in evictions. We were also so thrilled to have worked this session with Gary Community Ventures, the Colorado Fiscal Institute, the Bell Policy Center, and other partners on House Bill 1311, the Family Affordability Tax Credit. This bill is going to provide a significant tax credit to families with children in our state. We are grateful to the sponsors of 1311, Reps. deGruy Kennedy and Wilford, Senators Coleman and Winter, for persevering to move this policy forward and ensure its success. A lot of work and a lot of creativity went into getting this incredible win for Colorado kids and families across the finish line this session. This bill is going to work with other successful tax credits in our state to cut Colorado's child poverty rate in half and make our child poverty rate the lowest in the country. House Bill 1311 is a great example of a policy that places cash directly in the pockets of families who need it the most. The families of over 133,000 kids in our state who are experiencing poverty, and research shows that this has immediate and long-lasting positive impacts on kids. And finally, we were very excited this session to support the effort to pass House Bill 1288, led by Gary Community Ventures. This bill will increase access to public benefits and tax credits for families in Colorado who may be eligible for them. We know the process of navigating information and systems to access public benefits is often very confusing, and House Bill 1288 takes steps to break down silos between our state agencies in order to decrease barriers for families in accessing benefits they might be eligible for. This bill will also allow Colorado to pilot an outreach effort to families who didn't claim the earned income tax credit or the child tax credit in prior years. And we know these are two of the most powerful tools we have to lift children out of poverty. So we're very excited also about the success of this bill. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues, Melissa Mares and Lauren Corboy.
Thank you, Sarah. Some amazing wins for family economic prosperity this year. Like Sarah said, I'm Melissa Mares. I'm the Director of Early Childhood, and in a moment, you'll hear from Lauren, who's our Senior Policy Analyst at the campaign. We had, I would say, a fantastic session for early childhood this year. And just like Heather said, despite some definite budget pressures, we got a lot of things done for kids. Here's our North Star goal. This guides our decision-making and our policy and advocacy work for our youngest Coloradans and their families. We have a number of phenomenal things that happened that I'm really excited to share with you. We also know that early childhood is not just about universal preschool. And we know that you all know this too. And so we're really grateful to have the partners that we have who have done some awesome things this year. I will start with a huge win. Heather mentioned this, House Bill 1312, a state income tax credit for care workers. This bill, starting in 2026, eligible care workers will be able to claim a refundable tax credit of $1,200 per year for 4 years. So it's 2026 to 2029. Folks can claim that on their taxes for work they completed in 2025 to 2028. This is a huge symbolic step in terms of recognizing the value of care across the entire lifespan. As Heather mentioned, licensed childcare workers and licensed exempt family, friend, and neighbor childcare workers are eligible for this credit, as well as qualifying home health workers and personal care workers as well. We don't see that you can disconnect one type of care from the rest of the care that someone might need throughout their entire lifespan. And we're really grateful for the sponsors of this bill. Representative Sirota, Representative Garcia, Senator Rodriguez, and Senator Bridges, who believe in that vision of the care economy as the foundation for everything else that we're able to do. We're lucky to work with partners on this bill, the Colorado Statewide Parent Coalition, Colorado Fiscal Institute, the Bell Policy Center, and others to get this across the finish line. And one thing I'll say about this is, to my knowledge, this is really a bill that is the first of its kind in the nation as far as including family-friended neighbor childcare workers in this way. And it really required some deep, deep conversation and work from state agency staff to figure out how to make this possible, and really taught us how much more work there is to be done to recognize folks in these professions and elevate them to the status that they deserve for the vital care they provide to our families. This is a really exciting bill, and we're really grateful to everyone who worked on it. The next bill I'll touch on is House Bill 1332, the Colorado Department of Early Childhood, or CDEC, Rulemaking Authority Renewal. The executive director at the Department of Early Childhood has sole rulemaking authority right now. She has to consult with what's called the Rules Advisory Council, or RAC. And this has really benefited the department, allowed it to be super nimble and approach some of these challenges and opportunities that we face for systems alignment and improvement in early childhood as quickly as possible. And that rulemaking was actually already up for review and renewal this year. So this bill, thanks to the sponsors, Representative Young, Rep. Sirota, Senator Buckner, and Senator Michelson Janae, extended the rulemaking authority of the executive director of the department for 7 years, because we know we're trying to do something unique and innovative in this systems improvement and systems alignment work, and we need to continue to be able to have the flexibility to be innovative. With that, I'll pass it to my colleague, Lauren Corboy.
Great, thanks, Melissa. The next bill that we will chat about is House Bill 1009, the CDEC Bilingual Licensing Unit bill. So this bill extends pandemic-era funding that would expire in September for a bilingual licensing unit within the Colorado Department of Early Childhood. And that unit assists Spanish-speaking providers in becoming licensed. So doing things like making sure necessary coursework is translated, providing interpretation support, and during some assistance when necessary. There are 3 full-time employees, and this bill will also support some one-time updates to the mobile application, which we know is really important for equity. A lot of folks use just their phones these days rather than a laptop or a desktop. And so it's really important that that app is updated. The bill also leaves an opportunity to incorporate more languages in the future to support providers who speak languages other than Spanish that want to become licensed, which we are really excited about. We know that Colorado is becoming more and more diverse every day, and we want to make sure to support those providers. So the campaign supported this bill because it is a step in the right direction for language access and, more importantly, language justice. We really see 3 main leverage points here. Access, more providers just means more childcare slots. It's very simple, which is always better for families of the youngest children of our state. For providers, this extends the professional opportunity to folks who want to become providers and just don't happen to speak English as their first language. That helps their families thrive, which then uplifts their larger communities as well. And lastly, for those children who are able to go to a newly licensed provider who speaks Spanish, research shows that children who are in culturally and linguistically responsive care, which basically means that a provider is mirroring the language that they speak or mirroring other important context points of their culture, they fare better both academically and socially, short-term and long-term. So it's really a really special thing for kids to be able to be in the care of a provider that gives them that cultural and linguistic mirroring. So we're so excited that this passed, and we want to give a thank you to our colleagues at the Colorado Statewide Parent Coalition, who were really instrumental in getting this across the finish line as well. And we're just so excited that this unit can keep doing the important work that it's been doing since 2022. Next up is House Bill 1223, improvements to the Colorado Child Care Assistance Program, or CCAP. This bill, I forgot to mention, can we go back one slide, Jackie? I'm so sorry. I just wanted to thank the sponsors of this bill, Reps Joseph and McLaughlin in the House and Senator Ganal in the Senate. So important that folks had eyes on this and made sure that this was going to continue to get funded. Thanks so much. We can head back. So, improvements to the Colorado Child Care Assistance Program. This was sponsored by Representatives Garcia and Wilford in the House and Senator Cutter. And this bill is important because we actually only serve about 11% of CCAP eligible kids in this state. And increasing that number means increasing access to more children and more families, which is so critical right now. So this bill simplifies the application process. The application for CCAP has been previously fairly burdensome for some families, just asking overly invasive questions that don't actually get at whether they're eligible or not. So this would fix that. This implements accessibility practices, including expanding eligibility. For an example, is children of parents in substance abuse disorder treatment. It will also start a pilot program for a provider-initiated process for CCAP qualified exempt status. And it will also create a study for delinking eligibility for CACFP from CCAP. So the Children's Campaign served on the steering committee in support of this bill. Again, we're really supportive because this increases access for children and families, makes this process a little bit easier for providers, which we know will, again, only serve to increase access for kiddos and families. But we want to give a huge shout out to Healthier Colorado and again, the Colorado Statewide Parent Coalition, who are instrumental in crafting this bill, holding its hand all the way through the legislative process and ultimately getting its passing late yesterday. So we are really, really excited that this passed, and hopefully this will be a huge win for kids and families to get them more access to CCAP. And lastly, we were supportive of all the Colorado Department of Early Childhood budget requests. Those included a 2% provider rate increase, which we know is so critical to help our providers stay afloat. Further investments in universal preschool and CCAP, again, increasing access to as many kids as we can. Funding for technological improvements, making sure especially that UPK application was easier for both families and providers to navigate. We don't want that to be a barrier for kids getting into programs. And lastly, investments in the early childhood workforce. And with that, I will pass it to my colleague, Madeline Ashore.
Thanks so much, Lauren and Melissa. So many exciting wins in the early childhood space. Good work. So I am Madeline Ashore. I'm the director of our Youth Success Portfolio. So this really means that I lead our work in K-12 education policy, youth well-being, and whole child supports. And this is our North Star goal in this work. I kind of think of this as setting a policy where every kiddo in Colorado feels like they belong, feels like they're supported, like they have a place and a future, and that we love them and want them to be here. So 2024 was a historic session in K-12 education policy in Colorado in a couple of distinct ways. So first, we made two enormous improvements to our school funding system. Upgrading our school funding system was a priority going into this legislative session, and really I would say for the past 10 legislative sessions, because Colorado schools are some of the least well-funded in the nation, and we see the consequences of that poor funding borne out in student achievement gaps by race and income level that have been persistent for a really long time. Second, we made our first ever statewide investment in out-of-school time programs, so after school and summer learning programs. Previous to this session, these programs, these really important programs, were funded mainly by charity or small federal grants or small program fees, which really wasn't great because these programs can have really big positive impacts on kids academically, physically, and socially. So a statewide funding stream for these programs will mean that thousands more kids and families will have access to these programs. And third, the state made a handful of good investments in youth well-being. This was another priority headed into the session because we know as many as 40% of Colorado kids are dealing with symptoms of mental unwellness. So let's begin with a huge victory for Colorado kids. the end of the budget stabilization factor, known as the BSF. So for those of you who are familiar with the BSF and are pleased to see it go, please take a moment to put some jazz hands or some note of happiness in the chat. I've been saying something like ding dong, the witch is dead. We're very happy to see this go. And we're so happy to see it go because the BSF is a relic of the 2008 financial recession, when the state's revenues suddenly fell by about 10% and the legislature couldn't make enough cuts to the rest of the state budget to pay for the school funding levels required by our Constitution. So because the legislature is also constitutionally required to pass a balanced budget each year, we created the BSF, which works like an IOU to school districts. And it diverted more than $10 billion from public education to other parts of the budget over the last 10 years. So this has been a huge bite out of public schools. Public school funding, teachers was a really big problem. So educators, administrators, teachers, parents, and legislators, we've worked together for years and years to build a state budget that isn't balanced on the backs of students. And in 2024, we finally got it done. So goodbye, BS Factor. We will never see you again. So when we said goodbye to the budget stabilization factor, we also said hello to a new public school funding formula. And this is another enormous victory for Colorado kiddos. So our old school funding formula was 30 years old. It was extremely confusing. It had really major equity problems and was largely ineffective. Thinking about those achievement gaps that I mentioned earlier. So in the 2023 session, so last session, after years of interim legislative committees, the legislature created a school finance task force made up of diverse voices and perspectives from across Colorado to come up with a set of recommendations to update the formula. So that task force met over the summer and fall and put out a report with recommendations in January. And those recommendations, with the help of a small army of fiscal analysts at the legislature, built those recommendations into House Bill 1448. So I want to take a moment to thank Speaker of the House, Julie McCleskey, Assistant Majority Leader Jen Bacon, Minority Leader Paul Lundeen, and longtime school finance expert Rachel Zenzinger for their tireless work to collaborate with all 178 school districts to come to agreement about this extremely important issue and this extremely important bill. The bill passed late Monday night, and this image gives us an idea of how the new school funding formula will work. There are three essential shifts that we're going to see in the school funding formula going forward. And the first that I want to talk about is that the funding formula changes the order of operations. Oh, if you could go back one slide, please. Yeah. So in the old school funding formula, district characteristics, so things like cost of living, remoteness, sparsity, and size, were considered first in the school funding formula. And if we have any math teachers on the call today, you will know that what you do first in any math problem and any math formula fundamentally changes the outcome of that math problem or that formula. So the new funding formula will consider student characteristics first. So how many students are at risk for living in poverty, how many students are learning to speak English, and how many have unique or special education learning needs. By putting students first, the new school funding formula is going to be driving significantly more dollars towards kids that we know need more resources. Okay, now next slide. So like I said, in addition to the order of the operations change that will drive more funding towards the students who we know need more funding, the new school funding formula also significantly increased the weights for the extra dollars that special education, at-risk, and English language learners will receive in the new funding formula. So this means that after the funding formula is fully implemented, $380 million will support multilingual and at-risk learners each year. $250 million additional dollars will go towards rural schools, $280 towards special education. By increasing those weights and driving more dollars towards those kiddos, the schools that serve those kiddos will have a lot more resources to work with to meet those student needs, those unique needs. I also want to quickly highlight House Bill 1389, which was a great bonus bill that the legislature passed this year to help districts serving high numbers of newcomer or immigrant students. Big thanks to Representatives Sirota and Taggart for sponsoring this much needed support. So third, and perhaps most important, the new funding formula sets up a much more equitable school funding system. So as you'll have read in our 2023 Kids Count report, in the old formula, the biggest driver of dollars was the cost of living factor. So in 1994, when the last formula was enacted, the cost of living factor was created to help small and rural districts with high cost of living to afford the extra cost of providing services. So think places like Aspen or Telluride. But since 1994, the cost of living factor has driven a huge portion of the overall dollars that we spend on public education each year towards school districts with relatively high property wealth, again, like Aspen or Telluride. So this meant that an at-risk or English language learner or special education student in Roaring Fork School District, which is just right next door to Aspen School District, received less than half of the funding that the same student would receive in Aspen. So not equitable, big problem. Under the new formula, the biggest drivers of dollars will be the at-risk, ELL, and special education factors. By making this shift and by sort of redistributing the dollars in the school funding formula, the state has taken a giant step toward equity in our school funding system. We have been talking for years and years and years about supporting at-risk, ELL, and special education students. And with House Bill 1448, we finally put our money where our mouth is and directed more bucks to those kids. So just want to take a moment to make it clear that under the new funding formula, all school districts will see increases. The funding formula will be implemented over a 6-year phase-in. This was to be fiscally safe and sound and make sure that the implementation of the formula wouldn't overly strain the general fund or the state education fund. But over those 6 years, it will drive an additional $500 million towards Colorado schools. So altogether, the BSF factor buy down and the new school funding formula are just monumental, enormous victories for Colorado kids. We haven't seen this level of investment in public schools in at least a decade, maybe longer. So let's take a moment to celebrate, and in the chat, drop a line about what you hope or would like to see your school district spend their extra bucks on. So things like mental health supports, arts programming, better teacher pay. We're super curious what you guys want to see. Okay, and then I'll just quickly mention 2 more bills. If you want to go to the next slide. Yes. So as I mentioned, the state made its first ever statewide investment in out-of-school time. So thanks to Senators Kirkmeyer and Bridges and Representatives Taggart and Bacon, an estimated 10,000 more Colorado kids will have access to crucial after-school and out-of-school time programming. We know that some kids need after-school and summer learning programs to keep them safe and engaged while their parents are at work. And some kids need extra support in math or reading. Some kids need social opportunities, STEM opportunities, career opportunities. But we know that all kids deserve the wide benefits of out-of-school and out-of-school time learning and connection. As Colorado lawmakers are working hard to improve outcomes for kids through steps like universal pre-K, the elimination of the budget stabilization factor, the new school funding formula, after-school and summer learning programs can act as a compounder and expander of the returns that we're hoping to see from those investments. Because education policy works best when we weave a net of support for Colorado kids that holds them up both inside and outside of the classroom. And then last but not least, the state made a couple more crucial investments in youth well-being overall. So the Children's Campaign, or myself, I can't take any credit for these bills. They were led by incredible legislators and incredible partners. But I do want to highlight that the I Matter program, which was a post-pandemic program set up to connect struggling youth with 6 free sessions of therapy, was made permanent in this legislative session in Senate Bill 1, and an additional $11 million was appropriated for the program. Previous to this, the program had served about 11,000 kids. With that $11 million, they'll reach another 13,000. So this is a direct intervention in helping kids deal with symptoms of mental unwellness. We also saw Senate Bill 2434, which allows for school-linked healthcare programs in school-based healthcare centers. This is a big step forward for school-based health centers and programs that want to and are able to work directly in schools with kids to meet whatever healthcare needs that they have, including those mental health care needs. And then last but not least, Senate Bill 7 established a peer-to-peer behavioral health training program. So there's a lot of research demonstrating that youth in particular react better and respond better and get more out of peer-to-peer mental health supports rather than like teacher to student mental health supports. So this program will create sort of a train the trainer program in the Office of Suicide Prevention to get mental health training to as many kiddos and teachers in Colorado schools as possible. So it's, again, a very direct intervention in well-being for youth in Colorado. And with that, I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Tony, to talk about Health Wins.
Thanks, Maddie. So exciting. Good morning, everybody. My name is Tony Sarge. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Child and Family Health. I'm super jazzed to bring us home this morning with a share out of the incredible 2024 session in the health world. So keeping kids and families healthy is what guides our policy priorities always and what guided our work this legislative session. So going into the 2024 legislative session, we did not lead on any health-related bills as we continue to focus on the implementation of a couple of really large policy wins from previous years, including paying attention to the implementation of Cover All Coloradans, which will begin in 2025, and focusing on the continuous coverage work for children ages 0 to 3, so keeping more kids and families covered. That being said, we were paying attention to solving critical health challenges that Colorado kids and families were facing. So these solutions included improving perinatal health outcomes, reducing gun violence, and ensuring kids have access to free, healthy school meals at school. So one of the very first bills to pass this session was our Senate Joint Resolution, which spoke to a commitment to funding our state's Title X family planning clinics across the state. A big thanks to our sponsors in the Senate, Senators Marchman and Buckner, and our sponsors in the House, Representatives Wilford and Lukens, as well as our partner organizations for making this happen this year. So with the passage of House Bill 1262, we're going to see an increased access and attention to midwifery care across the state, with a special focus on gathering data on those perinatal health deserts our state sees, meaning that there's no OB care or birth care in those counties, to ensure that all birthing people have access to safe and affordable birthing options. A big congrats to the Joy is Our Birthright campaign, which is led by Elephant Circle and Soul to Soul Sisters on the passage of this bill. So Senate Bill 175 is going to implement doula services for private insurance plans beginning in 2025, and also is going to increase our hospital data collection and accountability for perinatal health outcomes. So these two bills together, this Senate Bill 175 and House Bill 1262 together, are really going to make incredible strides in understanding more about what we can do and what we need to do to improve perinatal and infant health outcomes in our state. Senate Bill 93 was signed by the governor about halfway through this session. And this will allow pregnant and postpartum folks switching between state-regulated insurance carriers to continue receiving care from their current care provider or at their current care facility until the completion of their postpartum care. So a really important way to kind of keep that continuity of care during that pregnancy and postpartum period. So we're really excited about that one. So Senate Bill 131, or the Guns in Sensitive Places bill, went through a lot of changes throughout this legislative session, began with a long list of places where individuals would no longer be able to conceal carry firearms. After a lot of debate and a lot of compromise, the bill passed right at the end of session with a focus on prohibiting guns in some government buildings and some schools, including preschools, which is still a really great win to, keep kids and families safe from gun violence. Another bill that just passed right at the end of session yesterday is House Bill 1348. So House Bill 1348 prohibits leaving a firearm unattended in a vehicle unless in a locked container. So we're really excited about this legislation. We see safe storage of guns in vehicles as an important extension of safe storage of guns in the home and an important protection for children. Finally, I want to wrap up with a quick update on the Healthy School Meals for All program. So this program has been a huge success since its passage in 2022, with 100% of eligible districts opting in, meaning that kids around the state of Colorado now have access to free breakfast and lunch at school. Unfortunately, the high participation rate paired with the challenges in federal reimbursement rates for the program means that this program is facing a huge funding shortfall. So thankfully, the JBC stepped up this year. The Joint Budget Committee stepped up this year and voted to temporarily pull funding from the State Education Fund in order to pay for the meals in the coming school year, and also voted to postpone other aspects of the program, including grant programs to source healthy local food from Colorado farms. So we're really excited about the opportunity to continue to engage with our food partners on finding a long-term solution for all aspects of this incredible program, and really pleased that the JBC helped find a solution to continue those free meals for schools for the next school year.
All right. Thanks, team. That was all great. I see that there were some questions in the Q&A, but also if you have a question, I think you can raise your hand and we can unmute you if you want to verbally ask a question. I do want to, even though these were answered in the chat, I would love for Melissa, if you want to address the FFN and how they get qualified to get the tax credit. I think that's great information for everyone to know.
Yes, thank you, Heather. So it's a great question. How do FFN get qualified for this tax credit? We're really lucky to have partners at the Department of Early Childhood who understand and believe that care across all settings can be really supportive for families, including FFN. So what will happen is the Department of Early Childhood will create a specific registration pathway for family, friend, and neighbor, which is what FFN means, family, friend, and neighbor care, in the Professional Development Information System, or PDIS. FFN will have to register in PDIS to be eligible for the credit, because the Department of Early Childhood will send a list of who's registered in PDIS to the Department of Revenue as a way to check eligibility for the tax credit at that point. This registration pathway will not require FFN to get a license, but it is a way if folks are interested to make sure they're in the system connected to supports. And we also know that the Department of Early Childhood is undergoing some amazing other efforts to support FFN with training and resources. So this will be a great way to find folks and make sure they receive that support.
And then Melissa, this is in addition to the early childhood professional tax credit as well, right?
Yep, correct. We think these both are super critical.
All right. I don't see any other I saw the other conversation if people want to catch up on that in the chat, but I don't see any other questions. If people have questions, please raise your hand. But we would like to invite people to our connection reception. And oh, I see. Oh, this is a comment. Oh, yeah. This is a great bill too. The Menstrual Products for All also passed, and that means that menstruating students will have access to free products in their schools. So that's very exciting as well. So thanks for flagging that, Amelia. Connections Reception, September 12th. I know it feels a long way away, but it will be here before we know it. John just put the link to register in the chat. So please join us on September 12th at the Grand Hyatt in Denver. It will be a very fun evening, and we are going to honor some legislators and advocates. And if you want to either scan these QR codes, or I think John's going to put the links for these in here as well. Please nominate people who did amazing work during this session, both legislators and advocates. I think it will be a very fun night because I can't wait to like take the energy that we have right now with all of the success and all of the hard work that we have done and honor some legislators and advocates who've really pushed things forward. And then finally, we are, even though the session's over, please still connect with us. We have our West Steps podcast, the Kids Flash newsletter, and then our social media. So please follow us. We post things and share things year round. Stuff happens even when it's not the legislative session. So please join us. And thank you all for being here. Thank you to all of our partners who made things happen during this session. Thank you to legislators in the governor's office and to the campaign team for making a great session happen for kids. Have a great day.